In the last decade, there's been a lot of talk about cultural appropriation, a uniquely modern take on the way in which cultures interact. As someone who has always loved hybridism of various sorts, it's a difficult sell for me to become particularly offended by cultural appropriation. I love the inherent tension between things that don't quite fit. And this brings us to the music of our October 20th concert. There are three pieces on the program that could be considered examples of cultural appropriation. The first is Manel Burgos de la Rosa's Habana, Vieja. He's a Catalan composer taking on the music of Cuba. The second is Copland's Appalachian Spring, which he is a Brooklynite taking on the music, culture, and sounds of Western Pennsylvania. And the third is Lou Harrison's Suite for Violin, Piano, and Small Orchestra, which uses various Indonesian elements in a distinctive way with modern Western instruments. Now, the idea of a pure European music, though, a music of European music without Asian influences, is in itself a rather weird idea. Because as far back as we can go in Western music, especially in Western secular music, there is at no point where we could say that there was non-Western elements did not exist at all. If you go back to the music of the 12th or 13th century, they started using Arabic instruments. They started using Arabic scales at times. If you go to the music of the Renaissance or Baroque, they still used some of these Arabic elements. They sometimes used elements from places as far away as China. In the 18th century, Rameau wrote an opera called Les Indes Galantes, and in this opera, it was inspired by a visit in 1725 of a troupe of Native American dancers and musicians. And this had a huge impact on the way in which he wrote the piece. Turkish music was so much in vogue in the 18th century that you could buy a piano with a special stop on it that could add Turkish percussion to any piece you wanted to add. Just imagine a Beethoven sonata with Turkish percussion. In the 19th century, things changed a bit. There was this idea of nationalism and the idea of various nation states developing their own identity. So we had the Hungarian music and the Norwegian music and various musics of these various cultures that had champions in those two cases, Liszt and Grieg, and others. And the idea was that this music was inherently somehow good. But the thing is that they always put it through the filter of their own particular 19th century harmonic vocabulary. We get to the early 20th century, we get to a composer like Puccini, who in his operas added this exotic element. So in Girl of the Golden West, he has things he regarded as American. In Madama Butterfly, we have Japanese things, and in Turandot, we have Chinese things. But the thing is, all this still sounds like Puccini, with just a gloss of this other culture over it. And it's part of what makes the music interesting, but it still sounds very much like Puccini. When we get to the 20th century, you can see a gradual movement towards a more, I guess one could almost call it respectful or more well-informed treatment of the music of non-Western cultures. You take a look at, say, the difference between Debussy's Pagode, written in around 1900, and Godowsky's Java Suite, written in 1930, and the Suite for Violin, Piano, and Small Orchestra by Harrison, written in the 1950s. And you can see they gradually developed a more coherent idea and a better understanding of the music of Indonesia in each of them. And it's also because they were just trying to do something in each case that was a little bit different. And in the case of Harrison, it created something that actually does kind of really sound like Indonesian music. Now, this is to say that there aren't examples in the 20th century of music where you could talk about cultural appropriation and it would be quite, at least for me, fairly offensive. As an example, Albert Kettleby wrote a piece called In a Persian Garden. Awful, awful. And then there's Rush Hour in Hong Kong by Abram Chasins. And it's just embarrassing to even listen to it. Chasins' example was one that was an interesting case because it became enormously popular. And about a year after he composed it, he ran into Leopold Godowsky on the street. Godowsky said, "So Chasins, I hear Rush Hour in Hong Kong's a big hit." And Godowsky said to him, and Chasins said to Godowsky, "Yeah, it's in its sixth printing and it's only been published for like less than a year." And Godowsky looks at him in horror and says, "My God, Chasins, I knew it was bad. I had no idea it was that terrible." Which of course is a whole other discussion. Now, if you take a look though at Lou Harrison's approach to the music of non-Western cultures is particularly different because he actually was an ethnomusicologist. He had a profound understanding of the music of Indonesia and Java. And he believed that there was a way in which all of these things should be brought together. He had a kind of universalist view of music and of the world. He was an Esperantist, and some of his pieces have tempo indications and even expressive indications in Esperanto. And this idea of this universal, of us all being one, was something that pervaded his thinking. And he brought it in various ways, in different ways. For example, in this piece, he takes Western instruments and gives them a gloss of Indonesian sound. But he also took Indonesian instruments and imposed Western ideas on those. For example, in the Concerto for Piano and Javanese Gamelan, he's got a piano playing along with a gamelan orchestra, Javanese gamelan orchestra, and one of the movements is called Stampede. And in the Stampede movement, you're actually using elements of Western music played by a Javanese gamelan ensemble. So when you bring it all together, what comes out? What comes out is the music of Lou Harrison, because Lou Harrison's music sits right at the juncture of all those things. And all of it, no matter what he wrote, no matter what instruments it was, it always sounds like Lou Harrison. And it's gorgeous. The sound is absolutely beautiful. Come hear this. There is nothing like it. It is the most wonderful music, and you will thoroughly enjoy it. October 20th, 6 p.m., Musical Instruments Museum in Phoenix, Arizona. See you there.